Welcome. It's beautiful to see you all here. Here. What we started with, first of all, when we speak this word namaste, we're bringing our attention to this same presence. What we just rested into is this essential self that is the same within me, within you, within every living thing, in fact. And so when we acknowledge this, we begin to engage again with truth. We come into a state of communion, true communion with ourself and with the living moment, and therefore with all living things. Because it's here, in this living moment, that all things are unified. That we know that. We can begin to remember that not as a concept, but as a felt experience, as a lived state. It's this lived state, this feeling experience that the human is craving. Every single person on the planet is craving this. Why? Is because when we come into this presence, we actually make contact with the very font of life itself. Eternal life. The energy that underlies all things. The energy that informs all things. In Indigenous law, L-O-R-E, this connection is fundamental to our well-being, to all life, and to our capacity to live in truth, to have a true relationship with ourself and with all things. What we make contact with is like an inner spring. So in Indigenous law, this is spoken of as a quality. It's not actually something we can give true definitive terms to or quantitative measure to. It is quality itself. This is dariri. Dariri is like a spring. I don't know if any of you are familiar with the Sanskrit language. That's the ancient Indian language, which is a yogic language. If any of you are familiar with that, you might have noticed that this word dariri actually sounds very similar to Sanskrit, but dariri is actually Aboriginal. And they're of the same language, root language. So this word dariri contains vibration, it contains energy itself. This is known and understood as the source of all well-being. It doesn't actually come from outside, it comes from inside. So when we take time to draw our attention in and we reconnect with this, we actually open ourselves again to the true quality of ourself and all existence. We tap in to this wellspring of energy. It's also known as the inner silent voice. Sounds familiar, right? You know that when you practice yoga, that what we are aspiring to return to is that in ourself, not the stories, identifications of the mind and the noise in our heads, but the conscious intelligence of our soul. Dariri is actually the energy, the quality, the aspect of our soul. And that is not something we can conceptually get. It is only something we can directly experience. This is why, actually, in fact, quality is the primary empirical aspect of reality. The primary empirical aspect of reality. Quality. That means you can't measure it by reason. You can only measure it through direct experience. You can only know it through direct experience. It is a wisdom or a knowledge that can only be met within it. This is why meditation is so core and fundamental to humanity's well-being, to the individual and to the collective. Because it is meditation as a practice that restores this connection, that puts us back in this right place. It brings us right back into Dariri again. So let's consider then the average life of a human in our world today. The human, by having lost this inner connection, is lost in the outer world, looking for something that is missing, right? Chasing, always chasing outwardly, trying to grasp. And actually, it is a quantitative activity, always looking for quantity rather than quality. Of course, quantity can be measured, can be defined. So that suits the mind very, very well. The ego is a mechanism that operates with that outer quantitative activity. Think of the ego. It's actually a mechanism which is seeking constant validation. Do you know what validation is? A quantitative quest. And so the average human is imagining that he, she can somehow validate her, himself, the more he or she does, the more he or she has. That is possessive, not beingness. And it is why the human is so profoundly lost and depleted, because possessions actually do not nurture and foster quality. We can say our possessions may have a higher or a lesser quality. Do you shop at Kmart or do you shop at Ralph Lauren? I don't know. Where would you like to shop? What's your quality? But this is an illusion. It doesn't matter what so-called quality you have of possessions. If you are missing that innate, fundamental quality of beingness itself, nothing will ever fulfill you or give you a sense of validation. You will never feel your true worth or recognize the innate worth of your being of every moment or of the rest of existence. And as a consequence, of course, we live in a divisive world, constantly fighting in quantitative terms, possessiveness, territorial, power, over, above each other. Well, that ain't working, is it? We know that this projection we're constantly perpetuating, this externalization, is the root of our suffering. The way the human is seeing is the root of suffering, because the human is looking outside and has forgotten to see from within. Only Darari can bring back that true vision. So this quality that I speak of, the essence, the soul, the love that is innate in every being, is something that becomes depleted when we don't have that inner connection. In fact, the love that we are fed by life, by every tree, bird, insect, blade of grass, by every living thing, the love that we are fed is cut off. If we are cut off from this karumpa in ourself, karumpa being the soul, the quality that I'm actually speaking of, that's karumpa. If we're cut off from that, we actually disconnect ourselves from the karumpa of all life, the love of all life. This is why humanity is so depleted, is struggling. This is why when you do not find the time to have this inner connection, to come into Darari, the silent inner voice, the clear seeing, when you don't find the time for this connection, to keep it alive, to cultivate it, you actually cut yourself off from the love that surrounds you. It's why you feel alone. It's why you feel lost. It's why even if you're in a relationship, you don't feel love or loved. You may momentarily, briefly, but oftentimes or mostly, the human's idea of love is not actually truly karumpa. It's an imagined, possessive quantity. How much do you love me? Do you love me more? Oh, I love you more. You don't love me enough. It's possessive. When we have this, there is no question of love. There is no end to love. There is no limit of love when we have this. There is no prejudice. There is no bias that someone deserves more or less, that a bee's life is worth less than mine. There's none of this. There's no quest to prove one's worth. Because when we have this, we are abiding in the innate quality of self and all existence. Think about this. Quality. Really contemplate this. Can you truly define quality other than it is an inner knowingness? It's an inner encounter. It's a realization that occurs internally. So this original essence of value has been broken. Why do you think Aboriginals shun housing and all these possessions that have been given to replace their connection to land and life? Because actually their connection was cut off not so long ago. There is still an intact knowing of this, that actually the quality of existence is this connection. The kinship, the communion that we have within ourselves and with every living thing. That is wealth. That is well-being. That is an energy force that cannot be depleted. So, because we have cut off this connection, collectively and individually as the human experience, we've actually displaced our measures of quality, and therefore our measures of values are profoundly distorted. We use values that actually have no true quality. We get lost in superficial values, constantly trying to measure our worth or the worth of something on a value that actually is worth nothing. When our values are tied into the external, the material, we've tied ourselves to nothing. Because all things that are seen, external, form, object, are passing. They are ephemeral. They are dying before your very eyes. They are changing before your very eyes. There is no certainty in that value at all. What humanity is looking for is the restoring of true value. And the knowing of a higher model of values can only be drawn from that which is the primary empirical measure of reality. Quality. That is soul. Love, spirit, consciousness, life force, beingness. All these different labels we can give it, but unless we come into that connection again ourselves, we are without it. We do not feel it. We are not filled and overflowing. We feel empty and lost and continue to look outwardly to fill the gap. you look through your own life. You all here are so fortunate because you do have a substantial degree already of this knowing, this experience. You have all, to some degree, come back in, made contact with this, even if fleetingly, even if you struggle to maintain that centered presence, to maintain that connection, even if you get pulled off and out all too often. You are so fortunate because you have already your own direct knowing and experience with this. Now, if you look back into your own experience of this, you will know that when you deeply enough sit in this, your sense of what matters is radically changed. What you thought mattered doesn't. What your ego thinks matters doesn't. That whole construct your ego has been operating with, all its stories and conditions and ideas of what matters and what doesn't, what should be and what shouldn't, doesn't stack up. It means nothing. And guaranteed it will mean absolutely nothing at the end of your life. What you will know is that when you are there, at home in yourself, here, present, connected, when you come in again to Kurumpa, that soul, that presence, that love, and Darari wakes up, you know what matters, you know what is quality. You know what is essential. You know the core values that are going to truly fulfill you. Does that mean it's easy? No. Because this has been operating for so long, is so conditioned as a mechanism to keep going out, to keep justifying itself, to keep validating itself. Doesn't mean it's easy. But that doesn't mean it's false. Just because it's challenging, it doesn't mean it's wrong. Think about that. How many times you question the power of that connection because you find it hard to keep that connection. How many times you doubt what has been revealed from within your own font of wisdom. Darari knows. It speaks to you. How many times have you questioned that and doubted that again because you go out looking again? If you imagine projecting yourself to the end of your life, imagine believing those doubts and you sit there at the end of your life that you pursued the path of doubt and you said, oh no, couldn't have been right. No, that's more important than this. What's your story going to look like? It pays sometimes to take a little journey like that in your imagining. Imagine your life if you continue to take the direction of that voice of doubt and judgment and ego validating, seeking mechanisms. What will your life look like? What will humanity's life look like? What will the world look like if we keep doing this? So, when you hear yourself And what I'm about to deliver, by the way, is not a judgment, it is a statement. When you hear yourself saying, oh, but I don't really have time to meditate. Oh, well, I'm too busy. Oh, yeah, but I'm not in the mood. When you hear yourself say this again, ask yourself, what's more important, quantity or quality? The ideal, of course, is that you establish such a profound connection with your kurumpa that you sit in darari deeply enough that you are it in every moment. Of course, that's the ideal. But you must remember that these conditions are deep. They are strong. You've occupied them, not just for this lifetime, but for many lifetimes. They are most familiar. And there's this mechanism in the human experience or the human makeup of the mind. That which is familiar is given greatest credit. That which is familiar is given greatest credit, even if that which is most familiar is an illusion, is a bag full of lies, is a bag full of misery. Why do you think people stay in the misery of their conditions? Because it's familiar. Because it's terrifying to step out of that territory that you have known, that you've identified with. That is why the only way you can face that fear is to come in here, because it's only darari, that inner silent voice, that can assure you. It is only kurumpa that will calm you, that will ease you. That is all. No amount of external evidence or answers from the mind or answers from anyone, including me, including any teacher, spiritual this or that, or who cares? None of that will give you the certainty you need. You can only find it within your darari, your inner voice, your inner seeing, your inner consciousness. I can point to that. Teachers can point to that. The elders can point to that, but you have to go there. You have to occupy it. You have to reassemble yourself in here. You have to extract yourself from all these possessions and places you think you need to be secure, to validate yourself. And that's work. It's not a magic pill. Precisely because it has been so habitual. The good news is, though, that when you do bring all that externalized attention back in here, very, very soon, within moments, you will feel something different. It may not be the fullness you yearn for. It may not be yet the complete peace and liberation you want to validate or prove that yes, you've got it. So what? What matters is that you simply have that connection. That's what matters. That is actually like, even if it's fleeting or it seems so minuscule, that is like a beam, a ray of sunshine. You go, oh, but I want the whole sun. But that one beam, that one ray of sunshine contains and is the same essence as the entire sun. Appreciate it. Be grateful. Be happy. Receive it. Know that it is enough. It's enough. The moment you start measuring it again, you've gone back into quantifying activity. Now, once you are centered and connected deeply enough, you can engage with everything, but it's from in here. It's from the inside out, not the outside in. And that's why I like to say, I'm here to turn you outside in, not inside out. So, shall we? And of course, the most expedient way we can come into this essence is with our breathing. Because we draw in with that life force, with our attention. Draw in. You notice that actually meditative practice, yogic practice, starts with the assertion of breathe in. It does not start with the assertion of breathe out. It is breathe in. That is the first reference. That doesn't have to be complex, complicated. Breathe in and then rest. Let the breathing empty out. So